You're listening to the Career Jump podcast. Insights, interviews, and success stories to inspire and give you the edge when you make your next career jump. Hosted by your career concierge, Andrew MacAskill.
A very warm welcome to the Career Jump podcast. I'm your host and career concierge here, Andrew MacAskill. And it's a bit of a first for the Career Jump podcast today, because for the first time, we've actually got the technology in place that we're also broadcasting this live. So if you're joining us live, a warm welcome. If you're listening, like many people do, to our podcasts on download via Spotify or Apple or wherever you access your podcasts, a warm welcome too. I'm hoping this idea of a live broadcast will help us not only get the message out and the help out to more people, but also feature some really interesting guests. And we've got an interesting guest for you today. So today I'm joined by Neil Ewington, who's a guy I've done a lot of work with this year and is about the only other guy I know on the internet who's as crazily passionate about job searching and career coaching as I am. So great to have him on board. And at a click of a button, I'm going to introduce him to the live stream. Hello, Neil.
Hello. It's magic, this technology, isn't it?
I'll tell you what. Yeah. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. So hello, thank you so much for joining us. As I say, full disclosure, we've worked a lot together this year and are big advocates for what each other's doing. But for those of you in the Career Jump audience who don't know Neil, why don't we pass over to him to share a bit more about his background and what you've been up to. What you've been up to, Neil? Tell us about you.
Oh, it's been busy, as I know you know as well. So yeah, I mean, for context, at the moment, what I'm doing is I have a career coaching consultancy, which has a very inventive name, the Career Coaching Consultancy.
Wow.
It took me a long time to think that up.
Yeah. Big marketing dollars invested in that brainstorming session. Do you know what though? It's a good point, because a lot of people do overcomplicate the naming, and the fact is, anyone searching for that is going to find it, which is good. All joking aside.
Which when you're coaching people about their LinkedIn profile and keywords on CVs, it's the same thing, right? It's how what are people going to be typing in to try and find whatever it is you want them to find you for? I went completely the other way, because I also have something called the Early Career Academy, focused for young professionals who are sort of in their early career. And I spent days trying to think of that name. I remember messaging you, I messaged Amelia, and eventually you both just went, Neil, stop worrying about it. And I picked the first name that I chose 5 days beforehand and went, that was a waste of everyone's time.
As you do.
Yeah.
But you've got to go through these processes sometimes. So how did this call all come about? Tell us about your background and how you landed at this point whereby you're offering, the Early Career Academy and the career coaching that you're doing.
Yeah, so I was a recruiter for over a decade, over 10 years. And I worked in technology recruitment for a long time, really enjoyed it. I was good at it. I was good at recruitment. And like most everyone else who's in recruitment, fell into it. Didn't go to university. I got into a couple of good ones, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. So I had a warning from my sister at the time. And she said, look, if you really don't know what you want to do, then don't go and get yourself in 20 grand's worth of debt for no reason. So I went and got a job. I saw a job advert on Gumtree, of all places, that said, can earn over £100,000 in your first year.
Oh, love it. That old chestnut.
I got caught. I got caught with it and went, that sounds like a decent amount of money to earn in a year. I'll go for it. And went and met, I can't even remember the name of the interviewer now, but went and met them, and they explained to me how recruitment works. I went, this sounds really easy, and so started working in recruitment. Spent the first few years at the JM Group, great company. They're still around, focused on tech, and then sort of moved companies a little bit. Probably the peak of my career in recruitment was working for a company called Recruited, so recruit with the letter D, which was always difficult to explain on over a phone. Where I was running the talent and delivery function there across the globe with a guy called Kevin, who now runs that whole side of the business. So that was all about, that was a really, really sort of advanced version of recruitment. And what I mean by that was it was taking large companies like, an Infosys, for example, who had a real struggle trying to hire local talent, because the laws changed around being able to come into a business, come into the USA. You could no longer get the same sort of visas. So Infosys predominantly would get their talent from outside the USA. So they're in a huge, difficult situation, going from this globalized hiring model to a really sort of micro hiring model, localized one. And so it was creating projects where we would go around the USA, set up 1-day interviews. You could walk out there with an offer the same day, to try and help that company secure the talent that they couldn't otherwise get, just generally because their name wasn't as good in the market. You got a developer who gets a job offer from Facebook, Google, and Infosys. They're probably going to take Facebook or Google. Well, maybe not anymore, but at the time that was the sentiment. So yeah, worked in tech recruitment, then went on to doing these sort of big projects around the world, and then I got made redundant, as a lot of people have earlier this year. Made redundant, and had the decision to make that a lot of people have had. Do I go and be one of the thousands of people looking for the same positions that don't really exist right now, or do I use the skills that I have to build a business? And that's when I asked some people, who do you know that's the best career coach in the UK? They all said you. So I called you. And that's how there was a list. You were on every list though. And the first person I rang said, I don't give away advice for free. I was like, oh, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. The second person, wasn't really, was more of a recruiter / career coach. It wasn't really what I was looking to do. And then yourself, obviously. It seems like all of the skills, because I was also a sales director for a couple of years, all of the skills that I'd learned over the last decade and a bit, the recruitment, having been through hiring processes with thousands of people, sending CVs to clients, working on both sides of that, plus the knowledge of how to sell a product, all sort of came together into this career coaching business. And there's also, as we discussed all those months ago, no one really focusing on people in their early career. I said this to a few people now. When I rang up Hiscox to try and get business insurance, there wasn't an option for just career coach. It was only executive career coach, which in itself showed that there was clearly a lack of people in that industry trying to help young professionals. That's the sort of brief version.
Yeah, got it. And how have you found it? How's it been, this dive into your own venture where you're helping people in their earlier careers?
So my advice used to be to people, when you're starting a business, go and find someone who's done it before and learn from that person. My advice now is don't skimp on paying an accountant, because that's been one of the biggest headaches I've had, because I thought, I can probably do it all myself. How hard can it be? Really hard. It's so complicated, setting up payroll for myself and then going through. And eventually I just went, I'm just going to pay an accountant to do all of this. So it's been really rewarding at the same time. I was super nervous when I started the business, that imposter syndrome that people have. Do I actually have any good advice to give? That day that I booked in my first ever session with someone for an hour, it was a month building everything, building the website, building the online learning modules, all of that. And then when it came to, I had my first booking, I was like, oh crap, I've set this all up and now I have to go and actually deliver on everything that I've been promising. But since then, it's just been, upwards and upwards. Every week's been better than the last. And it's been, for people who are in that area right now, do I go and set up on my own? Then I'd always say just go and explore it and go and see if it's something that you can do. It is a huge leap of faith though, and this is what I say to people as well. The gap between knowing that you do have good knowledge and you know what you're talking about, and then betting that knowledge on the rent and bills on a monthly basis is a big gap. It does take that leap of faith to actually go in and do it, but it's so yeah. Got it.
No, I think it's gone really well for you. It's been good to watch it grow as it's progressed, and I think you've had a flying start. To be honest with you, I think you've had an absolutely flying start, and I love this idea of helping people earlier into their careers, because I think you're right. They are underrepresented in the coaching world, and they face quite a lot of unique challenges in today's market, don't they? I mean, what sort of common challenges are you finding that are most common for people in their early careers that you're helping them solve? What kind of things?
It's that it's the attitude that's driven into us when we're young. If you don't have a high paying job, then you're not going to be happy in life. And almost everyone that comes to me is, I want to be earning more money. I want to be doing better. I want more status. Some of the slightly sort of 30, 35-year-olds that I've dealt with, so slightly older, but still early career, have said, I've been driving for this success my whole 20s and I have no idea why. So it's sort of two ends of the scale where you can see people who are making that mistake and actively go away that mistake of just go the role and status, and then people who are slightly older regretting that decision. But in terms of common issues, I think it's probably common across the board. Not being able to get access to, not being ignored. I think that's the one thing that people keep saying to me. I spent 3 hours on this application and they just didn't come back to me. Or, trying to get hold of recruiters, which, as we know, can be very difficult sometimes, as we both come from that background. But, I think also it's the sort of the issues that come with the gap between belief and values from the last generation, or the incumbent generation, I should say, and what we have now. So many companies are offering things like, we've got beanbags at a table tennis table. It's not really what people are looking for. It is nice, and I do enjoy table tennis, but that's not what drives people of this generation. It's more about purpose. I did a post the other day about corporate responsibility. 9 out of 10 millennials will choose a brand because it has a higher level of corporate responsibility, even if it's more expensive. So, that's a few of sort of the issues that face this generation.
Yeah, I totally see that. It's really impactful work, isn't it? It's really, really impactful work. Certainly, I wish I could go back and coach my 24-year-old self now. That is for sure.
What would you say?
I'd say stop living for other people's approval. I think way too much you care in your 20s about what everybody else thinks. And it's not until you start to release that you actually find your lane and do what you're supposed to do. So that's what I'd say. And yeah, I'd love to be able to go back and say it. So you're doing really meaningful work, which I appreciate. I'm a big fan of quotes, right? And we always on this podcast, we try and get a quote out of each guest that we have. And for those of you that it looks like we've got some people joining us live as well, which is lovely. So hello to everybody. Thanks for joining us live. Interested to hear any great quotes in the comments from people that are joining us. But I wondered if you had any particular quotes that you refer to often or have helped guide your own activities.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple actually that I couldn't tell you where they come from, so not great on the quote area, but wisdom can come from anywhere. Is something that I saw a real lack of when I was in my early 20s. You'd have managers who wouldn't listen to someone who had less experience than them for that very fact, because they had less experience than them. And that ego that comes along with a lot of these sort of sales recruitment type roles was an issue. So wisdom can come from anywhere is one of my favorites, because you can learn from anyone. You don't know who's going to come up with the next best idea. And so I'm always asking people, how would you do this, or where would you do this? I used to just say that phrase, that quote, wisdom can come from anywhere, by itself, but there is a caveat to that as well. I think it's really important that you understand the motivations of where your advice is coming from. And making sure that you are actually going and qualifying that advice, or where that advice is coming from. So that's one. Wisdom can come from anywhere. I think there's no success without consistency. I'm not sure if that's the direct quote, but the key to success is consistency. I think that's really, really important. And that comes with everything, right? With what we do with the LinkedIn posting. And it's something that I remind myself of a lot, because often I'm not consistent in what I'm doing sometimes, which is why it was always in my head a lot. Wisdom can come from anywhere, and there's no success without consistency. I'd say the two that drove me the most.
Yeah, no, I really like it. The consistency thing's tough though, right?
So hard.
There's a brilliant book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is getting a lot of kudos over the last 12 months. It's a brilliant book, and it explains about that habit loop and how to try and build consistency through a habit loop. And so I recommend that to anybody who's listening to the podcast. But yeah, geez, it's tough. So how are you personally going about working on your consistency to try and build systems that work for you?
It's about just staying organized with your calendar, isn't it? Because time, I've found after starting a business, is the thing that you have the least of. And I am very guilty of not taking my own advice on this and taking breaks. As you well know, I'll message you at 11 o'clock at night and 7 o'clock the next day. Hoping that you had your phone on silent. And, I think it's really easy to overwork yourself and manage your time badly. I'm certainly guilty of not managing my time well. Well is probably not the right word, but, trying to do too much at the same time. And, working from 7 a.m. till midnight I could have done that tomorrow, but when you're building something from scratch, you feel like I always had that attitude when I was working, do I deserve to go home today? Did I do enough work that I deserve to go home today? And can I look back on this day and say, I did a good day's work? And there's always that sense of, well, there's always more that you can do. And when it's your own business, there is absolutely always more that you can do. So when do you decide, well, enough is enough today? So my calendar is now, rules my life. I never used to utilize it very effectively, to be brutally honest. Now I have absolutely everything in there. I have breaks, I have do not disturb times, I have times in between the calls that I'm doing, and that's all set up by design to ensure that I'm, not going to, burn out and not going to overwork myself. And also, a lot of the work, a lot of the consistency work has been just making time in my calendar to, putting in, this is the time that you're sending out your posts. Because you need time to think about it. You need time to write it. You need time to respond to the comments as well. So putting that time in there has been really key. And for mundane things, I never used to have lunch in my calendar. I do now, because otherwise it was just, you work through the day, even though you find yourself working at lunch anyway. But yeah, utilizing my calendar has definitely been the biggest thing that I've been doing. And it is working. I'm still not at the level of consistency I'd like, but, we're getting there.
Yeah, totally. And it's the same consistency we try and help job seekers with as well, right? So that they're getting full use of their time. I really like some of the quotes that are coming through here. There's one from Christian, which was, choose a job you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. I think that's a fantastic way to look at careers. So that's a really, really good one too. So let's transition into talking a little bit more about the job seeking world and the type of advice you're giving out and what you're seeing. Hey everybody, it's Andrew here. Just wanted to very briefly interrupt this podcast episode to tell you a little bit more about our Career Jump Club. So our Career Jump Club was created to help job seekers understand what they want and how to get it, right? So becoming a club member is a great move if you're looking to get the clarity and confidence in order to secure your next role. With the membership, you get a number of different things. So first thing you get is access to our online platform, which has over 30 videos, 40, 50 different templates, workbooks, and it takes you through everything from sort of understanding what you want to how to position your CV and LinkedIn, how to interview, how to close offers and negotiate better salaries, a full end-to-end job search course effectively for senior leaders. So you get that, you get a fortnightly group coaching call, which is with me and with the other members, where we bounce around best practice, share slide decks, share techniques, and share the latest data on what's working for people. And you get to, most importantly, become part of our closed LinkedIn group and our closed community. And in there is where the magic often happens, because you get people referring each other into opportunity, supporting each other, and just sharing. And that's what it's all about. So if you're financially able and you'd like to invest in your job search, head on over to www.careerjump.com, all one word, /club, and you'll find the landing page and come and give it a go. We'll see you in there. Anyway, back to the pod. Talk me through interviews, right? Like, one thing I know from having coached a lot of people in the last 12 months through interviews is people kind of hate them, right? There's some big blockers there, isn't there? Big blockers. So how are you helping people interview?
It's just such an unnatural thing to do. Let's all sit around a table and we're going to ask you some questions about your life that we haven't told you what the questions are beforehand. And if you get it wrong, then we're not going to pay you any money. It's just such an unnatural, scenario to be in. Some companies will say, well, we want you to meet everyone. Do you really want me to meet everyone in the company? Like, if I have to do more than 3 hours of interviews, I'm going to start charging you for this time. It's getting a bit ridiculous. But how do you help people through interviews? I think the most important thing is a lot of people go into an interview situation because it's so unnatural. They then become unnatural, and their personality doesn't come across. They're not themselves anymore. So it's really important. Like, one piece of advice that I give people, especially on Zoom calls, is if you are that sort of person that gets super, super nervous, have a friend sit just behind the camera and be talking to them. be saying the answers to them. Make sure that you're utilizing the fact that this, mostly video interviews now, utilize that technology. Make sure that, you have tabs open. Sometimes again, with anxiety, the first time I ever do anything personally, when it's, a big group call, I just tab off and I don't look at people. That really helps me. But that doesn't work for everyone, because, sometimes you want to be reading people's reactions and stuff. But if that is for some people, that does really work, just tabbing out, not being able to see yourself, or just moving it so you can only see yourself. And ensure that you're coming across well. In terms of the whole, getting yourself ready for the interview situation, I think a lot of people, the STAR method is good in terms of the questions and answers, but don't rely on it as the most important thing that you're going to be answering. Just make sure that every single question that is asked, you're referring back to that question in every sentence that you're saying. So to do with my organization skills or my project management skills, because a lot of time people, when they're nervous and because it's this unnatural situation, they'll wander off, they'll talk for 4 or 5 minutes. And then the worst thing you can ever say in an interview was, sorry, what was the question again? And if you said that, then you might as well just leave, right? So, refer back to the subject of that question as you're talking through, and that'll keep you on track. I mean, we could do tips and tricks for an hour on this. I mean, I do an hour session on this, but I think that the most important thing is just to try and go in with confidence and don't be unnatural. And if you need to tab out, if you're anxious about it, or you need to have someone sit there, then do that, because the more natural you seem, the more natural your answers come across as well. And you'll also find yourself picking out better answers than if you sit down and you've memorized a lot of answers to questions, and it's going to sound robotic, and you want that personality to come across.
You definitely want to be present. You're right on that. I think the mindset bit is absolutely key. And I'm kind of staying away from the word mindset at the moment, because I don't like the set part of it, because I don't believe your mind is set. I think it's something you can shift. And what I think the shift you need to have in your mind before you go into interview is to say to yourself, before you even start speaking to somebody, this is going to go well. This person has a challenge they need help with, and this person wants me to be the solution to that challenge. And we're going to like each other. And if you kind of say those 4 things to yourself, how you approach into the interview then will be far more present. You'll tend to be smiling. It's, if you've convinced yourself you're going to like them, they'll feel that you like them, and then they'll tend to like you back. And you can get that energy going in the right way, right? Rather than, as you say, the kind of nervous, stuttering, waffling stuff that goes all over the place. So
yeah, I think that the most important thing you need to remember is that role exists because there is a challenge that needs to be solved, right? Like you said, you need to identify what that challenge is, because it might not just be as simple as we need a project manager. It might be we need a project manager to solve this particular problem. So it's like going in to buy a car, and the car salesman keeps telling you, how good the engine is or how good the mileage is, but all you really care about is that it's blue. He hasn't talked about that. It might be a great car, you might be a great candidate, a fantastic professional, talking about all these amazing things that you've done, but they might not care about any of those. They might have a very specific problem they're looking to solve, or a challenge they're looking to solve. So always try and find that out as early on in the process as possible, because then you can refer back in that interview to exactly I'm going to solve that challenge. People don't necessarily care about, you might have done some of the most amazing work in your field, but if it's not relevant to the challenge that employee is trying to solve, then it doesn't matter to them.
Yeah, relevance is bang on. Being present, being relevant, absolutely bang on. I think some people use interviews as an opportunity to air their knowledge rather than answer the question. And it's not about, you can win the argument and lose the job quite often in an interview if you get into that kind of ego-based activity. So I really, really like that. And for those of you who are joining us live, if you have any questions on interviews, put them in the stream and we'll try and revisit them before the podcast finish. So some great stuff in there. Right, from interviews then, kind of working backwards. So Neil, tell us about CVs and how that can help you get in the room in the first place.
Yeah, so it's really important to understand that that don't overcomplicate things with your CV. You need to ensure that you're again talking about what challenges and problems you solve for employers. Most employers don't really care about what you've done; they care about what challenge you solve. So get that right up top. Talk about what it is that you're looking to do. Your mission statement. Don't say stuff like, I'm hardworking and have good organizational skills. I don't know that. They don't know that either. Give an example. of why you're a hard worker and you have good organizational skills. Like, quote some achievements that you've done, or any achievements that you have. Talk about what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, because then you're going to get a good match and it's going to line up properly. Obviously, keep it simple, and make sure that you've got your key achievements, what challenges you solve, and don't make it too long. Obviously, no one's, if people aren't reading through the first 10 seconds of a CV, they're certainly not reading one that's 10 pages long. If you have relevant information from the past that you want to put in, great, just put it in the key career achievements section, and have that in there. But yeah, keep it simple, and using that CV to ensure that sending it to networking with people effectively, and then sending that CV across is again, engaging your empathy on this. Why would that person want to speak to me? If I'm a project manager, what's a project manager good at? If I'm a salesperson, what does a sales director want to see in my CV? Do they want to see that, I worked on this project, or do they want to see that I overachieved my targets by 20% for the last 3 years? That's what they want to see. That's what a sales director is going to go, I want to speak to that person. And that applies to any industry that you're in.
Totally get that. We've got an interesting question that's come in, actually, which is, what's the best way to answer the tell me about yourself question in an interview, in your view?
That is a good question, actually, because I just had to do it half an hour ago, didn't I? So tell me about yourself. It's an interesting one. I think that what you need to do is make it that this is an opportunity to, most of the interview is not going to be an opportunity for you to be funny and make a joke. This is an opportunity for you to show a bit of personality, show that you're, again, I wouldn't answer saying I'm hardworking and dedicated. I'd say, this is the type of person that I am. This is what I do as a hobby in my spare time. This is what I'm passionate about. These are the things that I'm passionate about, because anytime you're talking about something you're passionate about, it comes across, that personality. It's really hard to talk about something you're genuinely passionate about without it sounding like you're very confident in what you're saying, right? So I'd be honest
make it human, by the sounds of it. I think a lot of people just read out what's already on their CV, don't they? And that doesn't really offer the interviewer any insights.
Yeah.
Now, if you've got it, I know some of the people you're dealing with don't have huge experience, but if you do have some experience, a good important thing to do is to potentially build it out around the 5-5-5 structure that we use in Executive Career Jump, which is to make sure that your answer is less than 5 minutes, but you cover off 5 key achievements and 5 learnings. And the learnings is the key. If you can tell your story using learnings, that's such an attractive thing to the person that's interviewing you, isn't it? So if you've got the opportunity and you've got the experience and the context, I would say focus on that, which is good.
Yeah.
What about another question that's come in, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time question? That's a common one as well.
I think everyone should know there's a couple of different ways to answer this question, because I can talk about my personal experience and how I achieve my goals and what I'm looking to do. I've always had an image in my mind, and not just, I want to be doing this role, but where am I? What city am I in? Am I in the countryside? Am I by a beach? Do I have a dog? Do I have a family? Having that, and that's how, I wanted to go to New York when I was 22, and I wanted to work there for a year. So when I was 22, I had an image in my mind of me on Fifth Avenue. I knew exactly what suit I was wearing. I knew exactly, the kind of people that I was hanging around with, and I achieved that goal in I think it was two and a half years. And it was so vivid in my mind that I went and stood in that spot on Fifth Avenue, knowing that I'd achieved that goal. So I think when people ask the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I think it's more important you talk about what your mission statement is for what you're trying to achieve, because it could be 5 years, it could be 1 year, and it could change. So write a mission statement. Really think about, what is it that I want to be doing? What is it that I want to achieve in terms of where I want to be in life? Don't just talk about work. I think it's important to show, again, that human side, and talk about what you want, where you want to be in life, and how you can potentially help each other, how they can help you, and how you can help them achieve their goals and yours.
Yeah, so talk about who you want to be in 5 years rather than where you want to be, and
exactly
how work and your career will feed into that sort of visualization that you have. But I'm not a massive fan of that question when people throw it out there anyway.
Yeah,
it sucks. There you go. Well said. So what about any of the kind of common mistakes that you see people make? The kind of tripwires that exist in the job searching world at the moment. What kind of stuff do you see that you'd want people to know about and be able to avoid? What kind of errors?
When you're networking on LinkedIn, don't just send a message saying, hey, I'm looking for this job, here's my CV. That's not going to get you anywhere. Like with everything, it's all about adding value. If you can add value to someone you sending that message on LinkedIn is like going up to a stranger in the street and saying, hey, can I have £5, please? Well, no, I don't know who you are. I'm not going to give you any money. But if you went up to someone in the street and you offered them some genuine value about their life, their job, their career, then, next time you see them in the street, a week later, when you send them that second message 5 days later, they're going to be more inclined to help you. They're going to be more inclined to actually give you some value. And what I mean by value is, it could be something as simple as, say you're going for a job in HR, for example. Look up the future of HR post-COVID, right? Send that article. Here's something I thought could be valuable for you. They're getting 100 messages a day from people right now with CVs saying, here's my CV. Can you help me out? If you are one of the 100 people who said, oh, here's genuinely something for you, here's something valuable that I've done research into what you do and that could be valuable for you, then you're going to get on a lot better. And I think that's one of the main mistakes that people are making right now.
Yeah, it's an ecosystem. The more you pay in, the more you get out. I think if you only go in trying to extract, we talk about this a lot, it just doesn't pay off, does it? So some excellent tripwires to avoid there. Okay, bit of a quick fire round then to finish up the episode. And by all means, if people have got any other questions they want me to put to Neil, or you want us to have a crack at today, then you're welcome to put those in the comments as well. But what are the next skills that you want to develop, Neil? What's next on your personal development radar?
Facebook marketing, because I don't have a presence on Facebook right now, and I have absolutely no idea how to do it. I've been trying to do some research online, and I'm getting nowhere really, to be honest with you, about what does work and what doesn't. There's conflicting advice across the board. So it's one of those things where it sounds like it's going to be a couple of days solidly booking it out to work on strategy and how to do it. So in terms of my personal skill set, how to market effectively on Facebook is the next thing to learn.
Good one. When's it time to leave a job? How do you know it's time to leave a job?
That's a good question. I think it's time to leave a job when your values aren't aligned anymore. And if you see, we all join that question that's asked, where do you see yourself in 5 years? It should always be, who do you see yourself being in 5 years? So if you can see that this role and that job taking you away from who that person is that you want to be, then I think it's time to leave. And I would also say, I think it's really, naive to not always be making relationships, building relationships, and seeing what is out there. Always make sure that you're in a mindset of open to opportunities, because I think that unless you are, then you'll get to a situation where you might be made redundant or leave a job, and then you need to start from scratch. So yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, the sad truth is you do have to be ready to go at any time, right? In terms of your CV, your LinkedIn network, your personal brand, the connections that you've made. Your ideal strategy for your career is that if you were made redundant, blindsided, fired tomorrow even, moved destination tomorrow even, you've got some foundations in place that would allow you to transition quickly. The starting from scratch thing adds so much anxiety, doesn't it? And we're just seeing a lot of people in that world.
I mean, it's never been more apparent than now, has it? People, when people are comfortable, they weren't doing the work they needed to ensure that they were going to be okay if something like this did happen a lot of the time. And here's a common one. Have you ever tried to update a CV and try and think of the dates from 5 years ago when you worked somewhere and what you did at that company? If you don't update it every single time you leave a role or keep it updated, then you kind of, you're in a difficult situation. I had to email one of the people who worked in HR at a company from 10 years ago and said, when did I work here? I don't even remember. Can you give me the dates? It was such a long time ago. Keep that sort of stuff updated. Yeah. And just be ready to go at any time, like you said, and keep building those relationships.
Definitely. Yeah, I would recommend you update your CV after every appraisal, because you tend to have your achievements front of mind there. And I find that it's the achievements that people often struggle to pick out. So good advice there, my friend. Question that's coming from Chris saying, in many respects, is your LinkedIn profile as important, if not more important, than your CV these days? What's your view on that?
Two very different functions. The LinkedIn is about being found and your visibility, and your CV is about getting an employer to call you. And you need to remember that all of these there's one outcome and one purpose for everything. LinkedIn is about being found. If you're a job seeker, LinkedIn is about being found by an employer. That is ultimately the end goal, and getting them to message you. Nothing more, right? A CV is about getting people to understand what challenges that you can solve for them. Nothing more. That's it. And for them to then call you and then you discuss it more. That's the outcome that you want from your LinkedIn or your CV. And I think a lot of people worry too much about, what their, should this be slightly longer or should this be slightly shorter, or, should I add this paragraph? If it's going to get the recruiter who's going to be searching for you, if they can find you based on what you've said and you think they're going to call you based on what you've said, then just leave it alone. That's all it's there for. There's, you like to use this phrase, there's no place for vanity metrics with this sort of stuff.
There isn't.
So yeah, I think, they serve two very different purposes, but they do serve one main purpose as a job seeker. CVs to get them to, to understand what challenges you solve, and a LinkedIn profile so that you're findable.
That's it. Simple as that. It can be so overcomplicated, can't it, with all the conflicting advice and things, but I totally align with what you've just said there, which I think is really, really good. What podcast do you recommend people listen to, other than the Career Jump podcast, of course, which is a staple for any job seeker? What other podcasts are you listening to that you think's good?
Do you know, I try and listen to people's podcasts that I sometimes disagree with, just to get other people's opinions. Obviously, there's a fantastic podcast called The Homecast, which I have nothing to do with and don't run or own at all. So if people want to check that out, The Homecast is good. The podcasts that I listen to the most are Gary Vee does a great podcast, and it's always quite inspiring. That's probably the one that I watch most, and Joe Rogan, but that's not necessarily useful for work purposes. It's just
sometimes it is, right? I mean, in terms of the engagement and some of the thought-provoking guests he has on, it's insane, and he's managed to create something there of tremendous value, hasn't he? It's the transition to Spotify starts today, I believe. So.
Yeah, and I mean that he got a lot of money at that, didn't he? But yeah, I think he does have a complete variety of people on, and doesn't seem to be that biased most of the time. And I think that's always quite interesting, because most podcasts are, most people are biased. That podcast exists because people want to get their opinion out, whereas for him, it seems like he just wants to understand more about what other people do, and typically very interesting people. So I get, it's also good talking points when you're speaking to people. But yeah,
totally. Very good. Any final thoughts for job seekers before we wrap? Any final messages that you want to give to people who are in transition right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's only one phone call. It's only one CV that you have to send that can get you that job offer, right? So, if you're feeling down and you're feeling like, I've done so much already this week and I haven't got any responses, just remember it is only one time that you need to get that job offer before the whole search will be over. So yeah, don't give up sort of hope, and make sure you have a good strategy. Keep yourself organized, keep yourself consistent, and don't give up on the search.
Don't stop believing. Hey, I was wondering if that mic was going to come in handy for a minute. There, we're going to start singing that. Well, look, where can people find you if they're not currently connected with you? What's the best way to get in touch?
So yeah, just on LinkedIn is a good way. So that's just Neil Ewington, NeilEwington, or my website. If I offer free 15-minute sessions to people, and that's www.ccc.careers. So that's the two best ways.
Excellent. Well, keep up the meaningful work, mate. It's been really good to be involved with helping you launch and seeing how things are all going. And I think you're doing a tremendous job of helping people through a really difficult time. I certainly recommend any of our listeners who on the exec career jump side, who potentially have friends, family, whoever earlier on in their career, that they're directing people over to you. And I recommend that to everybody, because I really think it's super duper stuff. So thanks so much for appearing on the first ever live Career Jump podcast.
My pleasure.
And we'll catch up again soon. And thanks to all who joined us live as well. Take care.
You've been listening to the Career Jump podcast with Andrew MacAskill. For more resources and information, just head over to the Career Jump website at www.execcareerjump.com to supercharge your job search and start making moves. Let's get to work.